He didn't look back when he said it, just adjusted his cufflinks, kissed his new wife on the cheek, and walked away with her kids trailing behind like obedient shadows. I sat there, on that cold wooden bench outside the courthouse, staring at the concrete cracks beneath my shoes. "You're old enough to figure it out." The words kept echoing, like a verdict. The sun had started to set before I moved. My phone battery was dying when I finally called my grandmother. She didn't ask what happened. She just said, "Stay where you are." When she arrived, she wasn't alone. 2 lawyers stepped out of the car with her. That's when I realized I wasn't abandoned. I was being handed the first weapon I'd ever use. When I was younger, my father was the kind of man people admired. Sharp suits, easy smile, the kind of confidence that could convince a room to follow him into fire. I used to watch him shave in the mornings, mimicking his movements, thinking that one day I'd be like him. He'd pat my shoulder and say, "You've got my eyes. Use them to see through people." I wish I had, sooner. It started small. The phone calls at odd hours, his trips stretching longer, the meetings that somehow always took place at resorts. My mother cried quietly at first, then loudly, then not at all. She stopped setting 2 plates for dinner. That silence between them, it was a wound that never healed. And when she finally died, too early, too fragile, he didn't shed a tear, just said, "Life moves on." 2 months later, he introduced her, the new wife, a woman half his age with a voice too sweet and a smile too steady. She called me kiddo, like I was furniture. That's when I started watching him the way he'd taught me to watch others. He thought he'd cut me out cleanly, that by marrying her, by playing the perfect family man, he could rewrite history. What he didn't expect was that I'd been paying attention all these years. I knew the passwords he used, the way he reused his security questions, his habit of leaving everything on his desk, neat, organized, but predictable. I didn't act right away. I let months pass, pretended to be cordial, joined family dinners, smiled in photos, made small talk with her kids. I needed him relaxed, arrogant, and he was. By the time I turned 18, he'd already set up new joint accounts, new properties, everything in both their names. His empire built on borrowed charm and hollow trust. So I started to dismantle it, quietly. First, I reached out to his former business partner, the one he'd betrayed years ago. All it took was a single document I found in an old folder to reopen a case. Fraud, misappropriation. Then I had my grandmother's lawyers comb through the estate my mother had left behind. Turns out, my father had been siphoning money that wasn't his. That made everything legal. And finally, I froze the accounts. Every last one. He didn't even know it had happened until he landed back from his honeymoon trip. The same day, a moving company, one I'd hired, emptied the house. Every painting, every antique, every memory he'd tried to bury under his new life. Gone. When he showed up at my grandmother's estate, he looked smaller. Not physically, but in presence. His confidence had cracked. The man who once owned every room now couldn't even step across the threshold without permission. "Where's my money?" he barked. I stayed seated, calm. My grandmother watched from the corner, silent. "It was never your money," I said. "It was hers." He looked at me like he didn't recognize the person sitting before him. Maybe he didn't. Maybe I'd stopped being his son the day he walked away from that bench. "You think you've won?" he said. "No," I replied. "I just made things right." He left without another word. No threat, no apology, just silence. The kind that tells you something's over. The house went to me, legally. His company? Dismantled in lawsuits and frozen shares. His new wife? Gone within weeks once the money disappeared. Sometimes I wonder what he tells people now. Maybe he says his son turned against him. Maybe he says I was ungrateful, that I stole from him. Let him. He built his life on betrayal. I simply learned to use his tools better than he did. I drive by his old house sometimes. The lights are off, weeds creeping through the cracks of the driveway. The empire of a man who thought he could outsmart blood. I used to imagine revenge would feel like fire, loud, burning, but it's not. It's quiet, precise, like turning a key in a lock and hearing it click. My grandmother asked me once if I regretted it. I told her the truth. No. I just wish he'd taught me what loyalty meant before he taught me how to destroy someone. She smiled faintly. He taught you both, she said. You just chose who to use it on. I keep the bench where he left me, the same one from that courthouse day, in the backyard now. Sanded, polished, a reminder. Because that's where everything